There is a strange comfort in doing the same small task over and over again. Turning a crank, refilling a lamp, cleaning up a mess you didn't make. When everything else feels overwhelming, routine gives you something solid to hold onto. Lighthouse has perfectly embodied that concept. Someone stays behind, alone, keeping a light going for people they will never meet, on a schedule that never changes. No One Lives Under the Lighthouse is one of the most true to Lovecraft games I've played. It took me about 2 hours for the first run, which is short, but works perfect since Lovecraftian stories are best when they are compact. But the video game format makes it so that there are more secrets to discover if you keep searching, rather than just a linear story. So join me in this video as we try to make sense of the bizarre events that take place at this mysterious lighthouse. We begin the game at the bottom of the tower. Everything is dark, and in front of us there is a small room, inside which there is a lamp and an oil can, which can be filled in the nearby barrels. But this room also has a mysterious trap door. Once you enter, you can see another lighthouse keeper moving in front, but ultimately he disappears into a wall. There is nothing else to see here, so I started to ascend the tower. I took a quick look outside on the balcony, fully ready to face Cthulhu or some Lovecraftian sea creature, but there was nothing at all. At least for now. So I filled up the big light with my oil can. Everything lit up, and then I turned the crank to rotate the light. After some more idling around, I entered a cutscene where there were 2 new keepers on a small rowboat approaching the island, and the dialogue let me know that the previous keeper disappeared. I suppose he ran away on a boat, left a duty of his, the bastard. Now there's no one on the island. The guy taking us says that all I really need to do is keep the light going throughout the night, and clean up if stuff gets dirty. He also says that I should be getting an assistant soon. And interestingly, the last bit of that cutscene came from an angle that looked like someone walking on the balcony of the tower. So we get dropped off on this moody, foggy island, and start making our way up. There are 2 buildings. One is a garage/storage area, and the other is a small house that features a mysterious chest with 4 slots. There is also some black goo on the floor, which I thought was oil at this point, but that changed later on. By now, I was already hooked on the story. What is inside the chest, and how do I open it? What happened to the previous keeper, and who was watching me from the top of the lighthouse? I was very eager to find all the answers. The tasks remain the same as in the prologue. Fill up the light with oil and crank it to make it rotate. Whenever the next step in the game wasn't too clear, I just went back to doing those, so they started to feel safe and familiar. I went to the balcony again and saw a light from the pier I was dropped off at, so naturally I went to investigate. It turned out to be a briefcase containing some papers, a picture, and one of the medallions that went into the chest slots. I returned to my duties, and another cutscene arrived soon enough. This time, of one of the boats on the pier moving, a bit unnaturally. I woke up, so this must have been a dream, but there was much more oil on the floor now than before. I made my way down to the boats, and what do you know? There was more oil across the ground, along with another medallion. Soon after, in the lighthouse, I luckily found a rag to clean the oil off with. However, this oil started to appear on the windows, which looked like just holes, so it wasn't acting how oil would act, as if it was slowly corrupting the lighthouse from the bottom, which is where a huge puddle of it formed. So maybe it's not oil at all, but some Lovecraftian fluid, maybe left behind by some monster. It's pretty hard to orient yourself time-wise. I was never sure if it was morning or nighttime, and the 2 would sometimes suddenly interchange. And during some of the cutscenes, I would wake up from the bed, so I'm not even sure what was real or what was a dream, maybe caused by something sinister. There were more things that would happen and break the routine, like the weight cable snapping, or the roof of the house breaking and needing repair. The feeling of dread remained, but I was starting to get used to the gameplay loop, until one night. The sky was extra cloudy, and while I was walking outside, suddenly I was no longer looking through the player's eyes. I was looking through something much bigger and with more limbs that looked like spider legs. And I had to run away as the player, but without looking where I'm going, which was hard to do and made me panic a little. When this happened, it felt like the story entered a new stage. Now we know for sure that there is something sinister on this island, and that it wants to take us. After I made it to the garage, the monster was gone, and the game went on as if nothing happened, back to the old tasks and routine. But of course, this changed everything. Before you know it, I was re-oiling the lamp, and I saw a moth stick to the window. Then another moth, and they kept coming until the whole glass was covered in them, and they left cracks too. I thought this was a very cool event. Moths, going from the darkness outside to the light inside. Maybe the player is attempting to do the same thing, but I will go more into that later. And something I just realized while editing is that the cracks and the windows were there in the prologue and didn't appear again until this moth attack. So chronologically, that means that the prologue definitely takes place sometime after this event. They also appeared coming out of a grave during a time skip, once again going from the darkness into the light. Every now and then, I would meet some seagulls, sometimes in flocks, sometimes one by one, sometimes alive and sometimes dead, buried under a pile of dirt. And whenever I would see them, I was reminded of the movie Lighthouse, where seagulls carry a big significance, because they are said to be souls of dead sailors, and it is bad luck to kill them, which made it very concerning that I was seeing dead ones around the place. In the movie, once one of the keepers kills a seagull, the events start going on a downward spiral. I was thinking maybe the seagulls in the game are the souls of the keepers who disappeared previously in some infinite cycle. And after associating this game to that movie, I couldn't help but try to fill in the missing gaps with the context of the movie story, and I actually think there is some overlap. Eventually, I found the last medallion, and inside the chest there was a shotgun with some shells, and a painting of two keepers next to the lighthouse, and even though I kept the shotgun for the whole game, I don't know where the painting disappeared to. I had a vision or a dream of something poking their hand out of the trapdoor and grabbing a key, and when I went to check it out, I saw the previous keeper disappeared text again, which could mean this guy disappeared, or this is more context from the prologue, and it's actually all been the same keeper, but the story isn't in chronological order. But we then get to see what is truly under the lighthouse, and spoiler alert, the title of the game isn't very honest, because there is indeed someone under the lighthouse. I'm gonna refer to this place as the underworld, and it looks like some ancient Lovecraftian worshipping cavern, full of spikes, strange geometry, and a labyrinth of hallways that are pretty confusing to navigate. It reminded me a little bit of the underworld from the movie Marebito, which I mentioned a few videos ago. I got the feeling that even though this place looks massive and its purpose is something we can't understand, we are only seeing a small portion of the whole machinery. I picked up some strange object and hung it off a chain, which is when it began to descend into the abyss. Maybe it was food for something that we never get to even glimpse at. Then I stumbled upon a statue of a petrified guy holding a dagger, and when I picked it up, I was back on the island, but for the first time, it was sunny. Suddenly back in the underworld, I had to carry the knife to a body that looked pregnant, and then I extracted a fleshy sphere from it and carried it to a suspended worm-like thing that took it and went up, and there was more black goo dripping down from it, meaning that this thing is the culprit, or at least one of them. During all of this, the timeline is quite jumpy, going back and forth between this underworld and a new version of the island in which there are a bunch of houses now, like someone decided to settle down here. There is even a church on the opposite end of the island. Maybe this place does have some cosmic significance, so it attracted a cult which made the island their home. This theory starts to make a lot more sense once you attempt talking to these NPCs, and they give very cryptic dialogue. Suddenly back in the underworld, we have gone full circle and once again need to find 4 medallions and put them into the chains to return home, all while avoiding the monster, and this is when the shotgun comes in and slows it down. There are more back and forth sequences, and these do make you feel like you're going insane when you're trying to chronologically piece everything together, especially since there are at least 2 endings. There is another boss fight, and this area looks a different color than the previous. Maybe we went even deeper now. We turn another crank, which is a big elevator, and find ourselves in a place with a bunch of skeletons. Maybe these are all the previous keepers who disappeared. And suspended from the ceiling are more of those fleshy things, maybe each of them placed by a different keeper, or different variants of the same keeper. The scene turns dark, and the familiar creature emerges very quickly, but luckily the shotgun comes in handy once again, and ultimately I was able to finally defeat it. Next we find ourselves in a room, Maybe this is the inside of that church from earlier that sometimes appears on the island, and the time skips. In front, there is one of those hanging objects, but here it seems to be sentient, and we can even talk to it, or rather just listen to what it has to say. And these lines are very ominous, but give us a very important glimpse into the background context and the story. Welcome to the Oblivion Chapel. Again, for the 1000th time, you and I have the same dream. Human, do not lie to yourself. You still have no right to change your own nature and can no longer obey the voice of his Lord or his angels. You have failed the trial, as you will fail it again, and your sin is in defiling the sanctuary and false service, and poisoning your own mind. Only repentance will bring you peace. In the shadow of the moonlight, thou hast committed a sin thou hast forgotten. Acknowledge it, and repentance is coming. Keep your chambers as if it were Lord's temple, and repentance is coming. In pursuit of yourself, remember who you are and what happened to your son, and repentance is coming. So this thing mentions the sun and some sin or guilt that we have apparently forgotten. Maybe something happened to your son and you tried to escape by coming to the lighthouse, or maybe the lighthouse itself is just metaphorical and just there to convey that isolation and cycles of guilt and inability to go past whatever the character is holding inside, refusing to admit it. Drinking is also a thing that happens. When you wake up on the beach after the boss fight, there are bottles next to you, and in one sequence in the tower, you have to drink and your vision gets blurry. Then you get to the next sequence. We pack up our suitcase and see two faces in the mirror, and all the NPCs are dead. The text saying that a terror was born under the lighthouse. Then it says previous keeper disappeared. So this concluded my first run, but when I finished and went to the level select screen, I saw that there was some levels missing, so I went back and replayed and found out that there is at least one more ending. In that final boss fight, there is a hole, and you can choose to jump in it rather than face the monster, and this results in a very different outcome. We row away from the island with another keeper watching us and get flashes of the houses, but now with red lights poking out of the windows and doors, mixed with flashes of a flesh wall and some rocks, but the flesh spreads onto the rocks, consuming them and pulsating. And we keep going to the houses and asking where is he, which I assume is the sun. And we also get to see some NPC dialogue, referring to the player. The keeper is out of his mind. He drinks all the day and wanders around the island, chasing that kid of him. He has forgotten who he is and why he's here. Soon he'll remember. Let's bring him back to the sanctuary. The visions of flesh show us that it's spread all over the rocks, and suddenly we are under the boats and have to break out, which is a familiar spot because this is where we found that medallion in the beginning after we dreamed the boats moving. Then we actually turn into the monster ourselves, and we experience all the chase sequences from earlier, as well as some new ones, but now we control the monster, not the player. Then at the very end, there is a dream sequence that I found a little reminiscent of the diner scene from Mulholland Drive. I believe the characters here are the dad and son, which also made me realize that in the picture from earlier, it was them as well. And also sometimes in the mirror you see two faces, so I'm guessing the other one is the son. The son tells something to the dad, but the dad isn't paying attention, and then the son disappears, but says that he's hiding in the other room. Then the son says that what he recalled was a dream. So maybe this whole thing isn't a dream sequence, but really happened, and the only dream in the equation is the one the son was recalling. It's a little complicated. Anyways, in the dream, the son was the father, but the son wasn't the son. So we enter the other room, and there's a strange book on the table. We go to check it out, turn around, and get jump scared by the monster, followed by the familiar previous keeper disappeared text. Before going through the second ending, my theory was that people come to this lighthouse, literal or metaphorical, for various reasons of guilt, much like in the movie Lighthouse, where one of the theories is that the lighthouse represents hell in a never-ending cycle. And ultimately in the game, people consumed by that guilt are always disappearing, like an infinite loop of keepers coming and going one way or another. You're isolated and it corrupts you, and when there ultimately are other people there, They feel distant and disconnected, only speaking in quotes, and you wish they weren't there because they're so sinister. But the second ending changed everything. It made me think that is not the case, but that this is a specific situation where something happened to the sun, and this whole experience is coming to terms with it, or rather the inability to do so. I am not sure why previous keepers disappeared, or if they really did, or if there really were previous keepers. Maybe each disappeared keeper is the main character once again failing to get over whatever happened. The dream and the fact the picture exists, as well as the mirrors, made me think that the sun was also a keeper since he's wearing the outfit and appears on the island. But the dream implies that the sun turns into the monster, so my final theory is that the dad did something to hurt the son, but he doesn't even know what he did, so he is unable to accept it or overcome it, which is what the church monolith tells us. And whatever happened to the son turned him into this monster, literal or metaphorical. It might not be the correct answer to the story, but that's what I was able to come up with after looking at all the pieces and trying to fit them together. This game really is a well-constructed story, and it made me want to play more of these short story Lovecraftian games. I've previously played really short ones from itch.io, as well as some longer ones like Dredge, but this fits right in the middle, and I think that's what gives it the best effect. I would kind of like to make other videos like this one. I haven't done a deep dive into a video game before, but I really enjoyed it, and if this video does well, I already have a few on my radar that I would love to explore. I would also like to give a huge thank you to the members. There's quite a bit more than last time, so big thanks to Wiz, Thomas Dubecki, Nighttime, Risperidonna, Teresa Raskin, Ray, Olivia Shell, Nick Blach, and Obsidian King, and I'll see you all in the next video.